Hello and welcome to this episode of Unbound. I'm Nicola Humber, author of Unbound and founder of the Unbound Press. And today I am joined by one of my very favourite people to have a conversation with, and certainly one of my very favourite authors right now, Anna Sansom. Welcome, Anna.
Hello, thank you. Thank you. It's always a joy to speak with you.
Oh, it is. I'm so excited about kind of where this conversation is going to take us, because Anna is the author of Desire Lines, which is actually coming out tomorrow. The official release date is tomorrow. So, oh my goodness, such an exciting time. Anna is one of the Unbound Press authors, and I was so delighted when she decided to publish Desire Lines with the Unbound Press, because we first spoke about the book and your ideas for it around this time last year. And we hadn't connected before, and I was interested in joining the Unbound Writing Mastermind. And as soon as we got on a call and Anna started to talk to me about Desire Lines, I had tingles. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, one, I wanted her to be part of the Unbound Writing Mastermind. But even right back then, and the Unbound Press was like, the idea was just forming. I was like, that would be the perfect book for the Unbound Press. So excited that we're getting to release it and share it with the world. So I'm really can't wait to talk more about this book, because it's so rich and it's so activating. So without any further ado, me just kind of saying how great you and Desire Lines are, Anna.
You can carry on saying
yeah,
that.
exactly, for the whole time, for the whole episode. Just me gushing about that. Tell us what made you decide to write Desire Lines. Where did the idea come from in the first place?
Okay. Well, it's been one of these things that's been building over the years, I'd say. So I used to have a blog called the Lady Garden Project, where I wrote about women's sexuality, and it was all about a celebration of women's sexuality. And then I also wrote some erotica and got that published. And I worked as a sexual surrogate partner as well. So I've done quite a lot of work in the field of sexuality. And the thing that's always irked me is how mainstream media represents women's sexuality, and how narrow that is and how limiting that is. And what I really wanted to do was give a voice to this broad and more diverse range of experiences that I know we as women have when it comes to our sexuality. And there are already some great books out there, and there's authors who I really look up to and who really inspired me. But I feel that we're certainly at a time now where we need more of these voices. We need more. We need more opportunity to explore who we each really are, rather than just trying to fit ourselves into the mold that we've been offered, or we've been told we should fit into by society and the media and by our culture. So the idea for Desire Lines was really about making a space for these conversations, for conversations about what does it mean when you follow your own paths of your sexual desire in your own authentic way, rather than following paths that have been set out by other people. And as I say, this idea was sort of bubbling away for quite a while, because I couldn't quite get a handle on what was the best way to present this. And then it was actually, when I joined your writing mastermind, that those pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. And through the freedom that I had within that experience, I got to explore how I wanted to tell these stories and how I wanted to open up the space for conversation about women's sexuality.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like a book that really demanded that much freedom to have you explore what wanted to come through. And for people watching or listening who are thinking, well, what is a desire line? What does that mean? Can you just tell us? Because when you first told me, I was like, I hadn't heard of that before.
So it's a concept that really intrigues me, and it comes from town planning, which sounds very dry.
Yeah. Don't put that on the front of the book.
No, this is a book so it's not a book about town planning.
No.
But the concept of a desire line or a desire path is all about these paths that you see that people make in their local environment that that avoid or go against or don't conform to the preset paths. So there might be pavements or sidewalks that have been laid out, but actually somebody says, well, I don't want to have to go that way. I want to cut across the grass, or I want to go over the fence, or I want to, whatever it might be. And sometimes we can actually see these desire lines. It's sort of like a worn track on a patch of grass or that kind of thing. But I love that concept that we have all these preset paths in life, whatever they may be, whether they're in our environment or whether it's things we've been conditioned to believe. But what happens when we create our own desire lines? So when we say, actually, this is the route I want to take, I might not even know where my destination ultimately is, but I know that that path that somebody else is saying, you must stick to that path, isn't the path for me. So what happens when we ask ourselves, what do I need? What do I want? Where do my desires take me? And then we follow those paths. So that's the concept of desire lines that I've used throughout the book to describe different themes. So I didn't want to just sort of talk about different fantasies or something like that, because they're so individual to each of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm sure there are general themes to desire, and those are the themes that I've tried to pull out in desire lines. They're based around my experiences and my broader experiences of working and writing in the field of sexuality. But I wanted to give language, because what I find is that we're not having these conversations. And part of the reason is because we don't have the language for it. We haven't been given the space and the words and the concepts and the questions. So I've got questions in the book as well, really to try and, I mean, you used the word earlier, activate. So it's that idea of activating, and of expansion, of sort of opening up our opportunities to follow and make our own desire lines.
Absolutely. It is an incredibly activating book. I found that when I read the first kind of copy of the manuscript, I was like, oh my goodness, this is really kind of activating so much in me. And I love what you say there about the fact that we don't really have the words for this. We don't even think to ask the questions. I think we can be so unconscious about our sexual selves and how we have got onto these very kind of set paths of what we feel is expected of us. And Anna, we've had this conversation. I shared something about it on the Unbound Press page recently, because when we were talking about like how to share desire lines and the book coming out and how to launch it, and you asked me the question, what does sexuality mean to you? And I was completely stumped. I was like, can I kind of go away and think about it and come back to you? Because it really felt like that. I didn't have the words I kind of knew what it meant to me, but I couldn't find the words for it. And you actually were like, no, I'd like you to answer now.
It was optional, but I really appreciated the fact that you did.
Well, you kind of like held space for me to try and find the words, and it felt like I did that very kind of imperfectly, but it kind of relates to everything that I and my guests are talking about on these episodes of Unbound. It is about kind of finding our own way and expressing ourselves fully. And one of the things I realized through you asking me that question is, I've really given a lot of thought to like how I want to be fully expressed in the world and who I am as a kind of spiritual being, as an emotional being, energetically, all of these different kind of aspects. And even though I've done a lot of work kind of relatively in relation to my sexual self, still I struggled with that question of, what does sexuality mean to me? Who am I as a sexual being? And I'm so grateful to you for like opening up this conversation, but also recognizing that people can be reluctant to have this conversation as well. What's your
Absolutely.
experience been of that, Anna?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of it is that there aren't many opportunities in our lives to explore these things, unless we create the opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's very easy to feel restricted, or to feel that there is this set way, and not even to question it. You know, well, this is just how it is, and off you go. And if that genuinely suits you, that's fine. Like, it's absolutely fine. But a lot of what I experience is that it's not until we ask the questions of ourselves, it's not even
Mm-hmm.
having somebody else ask us the questions, but it's not until we ask the questions of ourselves that we begin to know ourselves better. And as you said, you know, you may have done exploration into your spiritual self, into your emotional self, your energetic self,
Yeah.
all those things. We work on our bodies and our appearance and all those things, but to actually say, well, what really matters to me when it comes to my sexuality? And I think for some people, and I'll talk predominantly about women.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how gendered these things necessarily are, but again, we've got this sort of cultural and societal expectations. But I think for some women in particular, they might say, well, if I'm not in a relationship, or if I'm not this, or if I'm not that, then it's not important to me, or you know, I'm not at a point in my life where this is a priority. And if that's genuinely true,
Mm-hmm.
fine. However, my experience is that our sexual energy is always with us. You know, it's a component part of us.
Mm-hmm.
Our sexual energy is a lot to do with our creative energy, and
Yeah.
our life force energy, and our vitality, and all of those things. So my argument would be, well, don't we want to carry those things with us through life on a day-to-day basis? Doesn't mean we have to express ourselves in an outwardly expected sexual way, but we
Mm-hmm.
can still feel our sexual energy. So when I'm inviting people to have conversations about this, one of the first starting points is, you know, that question, well, how do you even experience your sexual energy? Not even thinking about your sexuality or how you express your sexual energy, but
Mm-hmm.
are you even aware of it? And how do you experience it? And when you tune into that energy, what wants to come forth? And I think this is partly what makes these conversations, they can feel quite clunky for people,
Yeah.
because we're so used to seeing these outward models of sexuality, and we're not used to thinking about our inner model of sexuality, our individual model of sexuality. So some women have been really enthusiastic about having these conversations with me. It's like, yes, you know, I really want to talk about this stuff. I'm at a point in my life where I'm wanting to explore, and I've acknowledged that you know, there might be a crossroads in their life, and there's different opportunities, and they're thinking, what do I want to do now? And for others, it can feel quite almost threatening to have to go there. And I would never force or expect someone to go there if they really didn't want to. But I think, as you said, like holding space just to begin to explore, who am I as a sexual being?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What does my sexual self want me to know, to be, to do, or not to do, as the case may be?
Yeah. And the gorgeous thing about Desire Lines as a book actually is that, like you said, you don't have to be kind of going out and having these conversations like, you know, with everybody. Or, you know, it is like an internal kind of reflection. Like, you ask the questions in the book, and just like, even if like whoever's reading it doesn't necessarily think, okay, I'm going to give some time to answer this question and reflect on it, just being asked it is really powerful and kind of opening in itself. It just sparks something off. And as you were speaking, there's a couple of things coming up for me around this which I notice. And the first one is, like, I'm really curious about, is like, whenever you know, you're talking and asking me questions about sexuality and who I am as a sexual being, there's something in me that just says, I don't know, something around, oh, well, I don't know enough about it. I'm not an expert, because there's these so many ideas about like what we see in the media about how sex is done and how it should be. and doesn't necessarily meet our own experience of it. So I think there can be this thing of like, oh, I don't know if I'm doing it right, because I'm not doing it how, you know, it's shown in films and on TV. You know, that's not how it is for me. So there's a bit of me that's like, oh, I don't know if I can speak about this, because I don't know. I don't know enough about it, and I don't think I'm doing it the right way. So I guess if that's coming up for me, I imagine it's coming up for other people, and it's one of the reasons we can kind of put it in a box and go, oh yeah, okay, that's kind of just, I'm not going to think about that too much. It just kind of is the way it is, and I'll just get on with the rest of my life, and not think about sex too much.
And it is, it's so much broader than sex, and this is one of the things that I want to get across in Desire Lines. Again, you know, if you, I did this once as an experiment. You type in "sexy woman" into Google Images, or and don't try it. I wouldn't recommend it, but into like stock photos or something like that. Oh my goodness! Even if you type in sexual energy, anything, it's so, you know, it's so narrow, narrow. And what we're told is that your sexual energy is about sex. It's about outward expression through a sexual act, which is generally penis and vagina sex, and that's it. And maybe you're a bit kinky, or maybe you're into a few different things, but you know, it's still ultimately about something that you would define looks like sex.
Yeah, with a specific outcome as well, like to reach some kind of climax, and then
exactly. Now, my experience of my sexual energy is so much broader than that. And if it was just about sex, then I'd have to confess, you know, I'm not an expert. And nor do I want to be. You know, what does that even mean?
Exactly.
But to embrace my sexual self as a component part of me, and to walk through life on my desire lines with my sexual self as an acknowledged and present part of me, is so much more expansive than just sex. And you know, that might mean that I'm having sex with myself, or you know, self-pleasuring, but it might also mean that I'm writing erotica, or I'm using it as a broader framework to question what it is I desire in life, you know, in a broader sense. What do I desire from relationships? Do I even want to be in a relationship? What might that look like? Who gets to share in this aspect of me, and how do they get to share in it? What's private and internal, and what might I want to take out into the world? So yeah, I think this is part of the, again, particularly for women. I never watched Sex in the City. That kind of passed me by, but I think even by today's standards, that is quite tame now, in terms of how sex in a box is talked about and experienced. And I think there's just so much opportunity to make it personal, you know, to find out what it means to us as individuals, rather than looking out, whatever we're looking out to, or comparing ourselves or judging ourselves against something else, and actually to look in and say, well, am I happy? What do I need and want? How do I experience it? You know, those classic things about where do I want to be in 5 years' time. Do we ask that about our sexual selves? Or do we just put it in a box?
Well, exactly. I don't think we do. Like, generally, I don't think we think about it. And, you know, as you're speaking, I mean, I'm thinking that, you know, there is this kind of broader aspect of, we can shut ourselves off or not be aware of our desires generally in life. We just lose touch with what we actually want. We just kind of go along with whatever, because it's the way it's always been, and it's what's expected of us. And I'm also kind of thinking about how our desires shift and change, like, over time. Like, my sexual self is not the same now in my late 40s as she was in my kind of early 20s. Like, it's very, very different for me. But that's not necessarily something that we're encouraged to think about. It's like we get on a path and then it's the same for the whole of our lives, which feels so limiting. So I love the kind of like the freedom and the fluidity of just asking these questions as we go along.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that thing about changing and, paths that we may have walked, desire lines that we may have walked that suited us really well may no longer suit us. And we have permission to come off those paths and to join a new path. And, I think that there's lots about aging, and there's lots about how our bodies change and how our needs change and how our preferences change. One of the themes that I talk about in Desire Lines is my fundamental desire to want to enjoy physical pleasure in the body I have right now, on this day, and every day. And this body I have today is not the same body in so many ways that I had when I was in my 20s. I'm in my late 40s as well. Things are changing, and we kind of, again, as women, we can feel that there's, again, this assumption around, well, if you're reaching menopause, then your libido will change and all of these things will change, and sex might not be as important to you, or your sexual self might not be as. If that's true for you and that's okay for you, then that's one thing. But I think, again, we need to question what our own experiences are of it and what really matters. And one of the other desire lines that I talk about is again, my fundamental desire for desire. Because, we tend to think if my libido isn't sky high, then I'm not interested in expressing my sexuality. But actually, we can desire, and we can express that, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
We can express that in so many different ways, and we can create opportunities to express that in so many different ways. And even on the days when I might be, my partner's got a cold just now, so I'm guessing she's not feeling like her libido won't be sky high. I'm quite tired, but I can still tap into that feeling of desiring desire. Is this something that I want to have in my life? Okay, where do I go from there? So these are the kind of desire lines that I experience, and I think some of them will be common and some of them will be totally unique to each of us, and that really excites me. That we can almost create this map of our own individual desires, this journey, this ever-changing, progressive, expansive map of who we each are.
Oh God, so powerful. And it is, this is how we create our lives, isn't it, through our desires. And I love what you say there about like choosing to desire, because I think it's something that, in life we can, like, our desire can get switched off because, well, we're just so kind of distracted a lot of the time, really. And, we go through different stages in our lives where, like libido may feel lower, but actually recognizing, oh, hang on, I can actually choose to desire. It just wakes something up, doesn't it? Just you saying that, it's like, I feel like I've come alive a bit more. So that's really incredibly powerful and empowering.
And again, it's about, taking the concepts that we've been given and saying, is this true for me? Is libido the only way I experience my sexual energy?
No, exactly.
So why should I feel limited to that one, that one recognition of who I am as a sexual person?
Yeah. And it's incredibly disempowering, that kind of, that story that we're kind of fed, isn't it? It's like, well, if you're not feeling it, then it's not there and it's not for you. So don't even think about it. And it's like, well, no, I can, I have a choice in this and I can choose to express this aspect of myself. So for people listening or watching this conversation, and I'm sure um, people are feeling incredibly activated just from hearing you speak about this. I mean, who would you say Desire Lines is for? When you were writing it, what kind of reader were you imagining?
So I think it is for primarily women. I would be really curious about people who don't identify as women reading it and giving me their feedback.
Yeah.
But I would say primarily women who are curious about what this means in their life. So they've already got some curiosity, some spark um, about who they are as a sexual being. And that could be for any reason. I don't want to sort of limit why that might be. And so from that starting point, they've then got this motivation, or they've created space in their lives to start asking some of the questions of themselves. And Desire Lines is really intended as a bit of a guide, not a guidebook, but a bit of a guide along different Desire Line themes with these questions and reflections. There's also some erotic stories in there, because I think sometimes it's when we tune into how we react to different stimulus, it gives us, again, this way of connecting in with our sexual self. So I use some of my own personal stories. I have some erotic stories, and there's a little bit of poetry, and then these reflective questions. So what I imagine the reader, the sort of, I don't think there's an ideal reader. I think we're all ideal. We're all
exactly
in our own way. But I think it's that this is curiosity, this willingness to start asking some questions, even if you don't necessarily feel you've got space in your life to live out the answers. Just begin to ask the questions. That's kind of how it feels to me. So I think, at any age and stage in your life, this may be applicable. I don't want to try and limit it in that sense either. And other than that, one of the lovely images that I always is that you got some glass going somewhere?
No, they're collecting the bottles outside. That's not all of my bottles, by the way, that you can hear.
One of the images that I used to use for myself before I wrote Desire Lines was this image of sitting around a campfire, and around the fire were women. There's quite a lot of women, and we were all there to tell our stories. And there's this, beautiful sort of dusk. We're in a forest. The only light is the light from the flame, sort of flickering gently. And so I couldn't see their faces clearly, but there was this sense of held space and willingness and courage and readiness. And so I think that those are the qualities that I imagine in the readers of Desire Lines, that this will either pique someone's interest or not. They'll either, like you said, they'll either get that little tingle or spark or question or something, or it's not the right time, and it's not the right thing, and it's not the right way, and that's absolutely understandable. But I will be so excited to find out who does read Desire Lines and how they experience it. I've had some feedback already, which has been great. But as Desire Lines goes out into the world, this feels really exciting to me. The thought that women can be having these conversations with themselves, with others, with their lovers, with whoever, or even with with their journal pages, or just in their thoughts, or whatever it might be. But the idea that this is the time now. This is the time for us.
Absolutely. Sorry, apologies for perfect timing. I'm coming to collect the bottles from outside, but there you go. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that kind of curiosity, and like a desire to kind of discover more of yourself as well, which is just beautiful. So if it does feel like the time for you to begin that exploration, then Desire Lines, the official release date is tomorrow, September the 12th, but It looks like you can actually hop on and order your copy right now and get it sent out. So go ahead and do that. And for people who want to find out more about you, Anna, and your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
So my website is annasansom.com. And there you'll also find some sample chapters from Desire Lines, so it can begin to give you a bit of a taste and a flavour for what's in the book. I write on there, there's some blog posts, some more erotica, and some other writing around the process of writing. Because I think that's another way that we get to express our sexual energies through our own writing.
Absolutely.
So I'm really excited to do more around supporting women in their own, telling their own erotic stories or their own stories. So my website, annasansom.com. I'm also on Instagram, Anna Sansom Writer, and I have a Facebook page, which is also Anna Sansom Writer. And it would be lovely to connect with people there. If you do come to the website, then if you sign up for my email list, there will be some conversations that we can have through email that won't be on social media. So I'm keen to have those more in-depth conversations that we can have sort of in the privacy of our own email addresses as well. So if anybody does want to sign up to my email list, that would be lovely. It'd be a big welcome.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Anna, for writing this book and like really creating and holding this space for people to be having these conversations in their own unique way. And I love the thoughtfulness that you have around that. But yeah, it's not always easy or desirable to be having these conversations on social media. It can feel like very, very private. So I love how you're kind of holding space for that. Yeah, and I'm excited to see the magic that Desire Lines creates when it's out in the world. So I'm sure we'll have another conversation at some point, because there's so much we could like speak to around this. But for now, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, and thank you for all your support around Desire Lines as well.
Oh my goodness, I couldn't not support such an incredible book. Thank you, you're so welcome. And we will see you again soon for another episode of Unbound. Bye.
Bye.